Hey guys, I'm Casey, and this is Click with Casey. And in the exit interview series, I am sitting down with people to find out why they left their jobs. Was it by choice? Were they forced out? Was it a mix of both? I want to know, what did they learn, if anything? And what would they do differently, if anything, if they could go back and try it all over again? So grab a coffee and settle in, because this next story just might change the way you see your own. Today we have Mr. Adam Baker with us. So glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And I have been really excited about your topic because it is definitely controversial. It's definitely going to piss some people off. Yeah. And I'm also really hoping that by the end of it, people can kind of put their own views to the side, or maybe ego even to the side, and really just try to see something from a different perspective that maybe they didn't hear about before. Yeah. So for anybody listening or watching, that is my challenge to you, is to hear something that might be a different point of view and to kind of go with it and see what it feels like. So
now, for the record, we did sign a disclosure. You promised no one would come at me with pitchforks.
I did.
That's still on? Okay.
So if you're listening, keep it civil. Yes. Okay, so let's just get right to it. Okay. Why did you leave your last job?
So at the end of the day, I was burnt out, right? And we can dive into why I was burnt out. But I can remember the exact moment when I was burnt out. And I'd work 70 hours a week, right? And it wasn't a big deal to me until one Saturday morning when I got an email and I realized that my values and my company's values were no longer aligned. And from that moment forward, even putting in 41 hours felt excruciating. Yeah. You know, and I'd never really felt burnout before. Like I could just go. And once that happened, it was like it felt terrible to work with that company.
Like, what am I doing here?
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah. You know, like, am I fighting the good fight?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so what I think is interesting is, as we're about to reveal what that email was, it's not like they were talking about, like, I don't know, killing baby dolphins or something.
They weren't selling weapons to terrorists.
Right.
You know.
So it's not that, but it was enough, though, where you're like, this is not aligned with my values. And that is enough to knock you off kilter and be like, this isn't working.
Yeah, it was the final straw in about 4 years of just these little subtle movements that just pulled us further apart in our values. And I'll say it. So I can remember it was a Saturday morning. I was working in my office, and I had received an email for a little color or background. I worked in utilities, and so what we do is we would train linemen. And so it was a really cool opportunity in where high school graduates would apply to become linemen, and they would enter a 2-year course. And the 2-year course was neat in that they would spend 2 days at college and 3 days in our program learning how to be linemen. So at the end of the 2 years, they had an associate's degree, but they had also finished an apprenticeship as a lineman.
Very cool.
It was really cool, and because it gave them an opportunity to have a really, really good career. Yeah. And what they did, this email was an announcement of an opportunity scholarship for these applicants. But the opportunity scholarship was limited to minorities and women. And that was a moment where I said, my son is, at the time, blonde, curly hair, blue eyes, and he wasn't eligible for the scholarship. And I said, well, it really said, like, you're telling me that my son is not as important to you simply because of the color of his skin. And that was kind of the final straw. And it hit home for me. And we can get into this, but and I'll say my mom's a survivor of domestic abuse. And she left my dad. She dropped out of high school in 10th grade to marry my dad, had 4 kids, and she left him and left everything behind, drove halfway across the United States. He found her. We left everything behind again. We were homeless, spent time in domestic abuse shelters. She broke into a church to get us out of the cold. We were found by the police and the pastor. I can go on. And I got accepted to college when I was a senior. And I was going to be the first grandchild to go to college. And my mom was so proud of that. But at the last minute, I had to turn down the scholarship. I had a scholarship for the academic piece of it, but I didn't have room and board. And we didn't know how we would ever pay for room and board. We didn't know about student loans or anything like that. And so when I got this email about this opportunity scholarship, I thought, there are white kids out there that struggle, that without this scholarship, they aren't going to be able to make it. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of like the punch in the gut, and just like the everything full circle. I said, our values are just so misaligned right now that it feels painful to come to work. Yeah. And sorry for going on so long about that.
No, that was very important context, I think, because I do think context matters, especially when we're talking about something like this. Like that story really paints a picture of your own personal life, your own personal struggles, and why you're like, I needed that.
Yes.
And why, So, gosh, I have so many questions, and I'm trying to even think about where to begin. So let's go back to the values piece. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you do value.
Yeah, so I value treating people based on what they do, what they bring to the table, right? Because there are a lot of people of all skin colors, of all sexes, that they don't bring a whole lot to the table, but yet they find themselves getting promoted, right? And we've all worked for those folks, mm-hmm. and that's frustrating, and it's tough. And then we've also seen people, the same ilk, get passed over. And what was really cool about this company is about 3 years earlier, they said, hey, we're going to start doing a pay for performance. We are going to pay you based on the outcomes you achieve, mm-hmm. Which I liked. I said, that's great. That's what we should be focused on. And so those are the things I value, and just treating people like humans, right? Yeah. And the same thing with the company. Like, just because someone doesn't do well at the company doesn't make them a bad person. It just makes them a bad fit.
Sure.
Yeah. So that would be, the big value for me, is just treating people based on what do they bring.
Yeah. And there was something you just said that kind of stuck out at me, and I'm trying to remember what it was, because you said, okay, so the pay for performance, mm-hmm. does that feel more fair to you then? Because people are you're showing up and you get paid for doing a really good job, or you get paid for doing a crappy job.
Yeah.
To the extent, so you're getting paid the amount that you're putting in. So that is what.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And I think probably one of the reasons that I really liked it is because that made feedback become a very important part of our culture, mm-hmm. right? Like, well, why didn't I get this raise? I worked so hard. Yes, but you may work hard, but the results, you aren't getting the results. Oh, okay. Well, let me readjust then. Mm-hmm. Let me readjust my efforts to get those results.
So it created a lot of opportunities for growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so as a woman, mm-hmm. Who has certainly been overlooked, and not taken seriously in various positions because I'm a woman, and also because I am happy and peppy, and that also can immediately make people not take me seriously. Yeah. When I hear about an opportunity for this scholarship program to come up, and then this money is going to be allocated specifically for the people who are constantly being overlooked, because that's what it sounds like to me. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a group of people, minorities and women, who are always being overlooked. I know I used absolute language there. They're frequently being overlooked for whatever reason, and it could be unconscious bias. You don't even realize that you're doing it, but it's happening. And so they're putting this type of initiative in place to make sure that those unconscious biases or straight up prejudices, whatever they might be, aren't getting in the way of people being able to, have an opportunity that can help propel them forward. So when I think of DEI, that is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the people who, and again, I know that there's a lot of horrible prejudice, racism, all that stuff out there, but I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the unconscious biases that we all have that we don't even pay attention to. So just assuming that it's all from a good place that we're not really paying it, aware of, that these people do tend to be overlooked for various reasons.
Yeah.
And so creating a space where it's like, well, hold on, let's look at this group of people and see what we can do here. That's what it means to me.
Yeah, and that's completely fair, and that's a really good point, because the struggle with DEI is it's very binary now. Mm-hmm. There is no spectrum for it. Either you're for it, and you're a good person, or you're against it and you're a bad person. And I was like, and that was the struggle I had with my company, because I raised my hand. I was like, I agree that we should help people that have a hard time. Right? Like I trust me, I recognize there's a lot of people that have a hard time, and we should try to find a way to help them. So I value that. What I don't value is taking this broad brush and say simply, because you're a woman, you must have had a hard time. It's like, well, that's not always the case, And I give you a really, really good example. So when they rolled out DEI at our organization, they had that's uncover this unconscious bias, right? And we had this meeting, and this doctor came in, and she was walking us through this, and she looked at our wall. We're in this big conference room. She looked at the wall and she said, well, I'm glad to see that you at least have a picture of a family of color in here, okay? And it was a picture about safety, and it was talking about, why are we safe? And we're safe for our families, right? Like, line work is inherently dangerous. So why are we safe? We're safe for our families. And when she said that, I raised my hand and I said, do you think that this may create more racial tension, more division? Because I hung that picture, and not once did it dawn on me they were a black family. It was just a family. Mm-hmm. It was a family having a picnic. And she looked at me and she said, when we come from a place of privilege, we may not notice that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, everyone's jaw dropped, because everyone knows my background. Like it wasn't from a place of privilege. Yeah. Like, if there were privilege, I missed the bus somewhere, and that's kind of how this DEI was framed. It was like, well, I was white and I was a male, so I've got to be over here, and just had everything handed to me. And then if you were black or you were a woman, you must have been over here and just had the roughest upbringing in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, no, these interweave, and there's people. Absolutely.
And no, and I totally, I would agree that there have been a lot of times that this has been put out or discussed. It is. I would agree. There is that broad stroke. There is that far, you're either bad or you're good, or you were either privileged or you were not. And that is not an accurate representation, right? Yeah. So I would agree with you completely on that. I'm going to just preface this by saying I don't feel like I'm the exact right person to have this next conversation I'm about to start, but I'm going to just throw it out there. Yeah. I think that the privilege that some people are speaking of isn't financial wealth or economic or any of those things. It's just the fact that because you are white, you are not going to be looked at with perhaps the negative light that a person of color would be looked at. Like, it would be like, well, we got to help him out. This just can't be. Yeah. Versus, well, this is just how it is.
I gotta say, poverty don't really care about your skin color. It's.
Yes, I get it. Both of my parents came from poor.
Yeah.
I mean, like, where will we get food? All the things. So I come from very hardworking people that are white.
Yeah.
And so I could not agree more with that statement. Yeah. That is so true. But I think when people are talking about it or saying this, that is what they're
to me,
saying.
It's almost like a sword to shut down an argument. Uh-huh. Like, Adam, you're white. you've got this privilege. You don't know about this.
Yeah.
So you don't get to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, that's not exactly true. You know, like, and anybody can talk about it because people have lived experiences.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so when it was framed as such a way, like that was my first taste of DEI in our organization, you know, and so in Casey, you know me, you know, I am not a am I allowed to cuss?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know, you know, I didn't know who, yeah, I'm not a bitcher or a complainer.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't like something, I'm going to try to change it.
Yeah.
You know, or I'm going to try to figure out and understand it. And so there was a lot of things that I did to try to promote DEI. I'll give you an example. Because it's not lost on me that a kid in the inner city is going to miss out on opportunities. And it's not lost on me that a majority of them are black kids.
Yeah.
You know, I understand that. And so what I did was I organized a group of my linemen to go down to the Erie High School, and we set up this big career event. And it wasn't like Erie High School put on this big career event. It was like me reaching out and saying, I want my linemen to come down here. We're going to show them the tools. We're going to talk to them. We're going to talk about the opportunity and tell them how to get into this program, because I want them to have the opportunity.
Right.
You know, and so we did that because I thought, you know, if this is what we want, and I tried to frame it in such a way as my experience is that if we're looking for inner city kids, Angela Duckworth, she writes about grit, right? Like when you go through certain things, you have grit. In order to be a lineman, you got to have grit, right? So like these kids are perfect because they know how to be tough.
Yeah.
Like they know how to like, I've got to push through this. When it's, you know, negative 15 degrees and there's hail blowing in your face, but you got to get the lights on for somebody, you got to have grit. That's what these kids have. That's why they're great candidates for this program, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to rationalize in my head, like, I'm not doing it because they're black kids.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because these kids have come from a position where they will have the skill set necessary to make them successful, right? So we do that. Do mentoring, you familiar with employee business resource groups, EBRGs? Mm-mm. So EBRGs, and I don't know what every organization calls it. Our organization called it EBRGs. But what it was groups of employees that had like-minded characteristics, and not like just look that way, but like maybe we had the same values, things like that. So you had the Mosaic EBRG, which is gay, lesbian, queer. Then you had like the veteran EBRG, right? And the whole purpose was for them to go to the organization and say, listen, we as this employee group think the business could be run better by doing X, Y, Z, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
so because we've got these...
So that was an initiative that was already in place?
That was part of DEI.
Okay.
That was part of their DEI initiative. And they asked me if I would lead the veteran one because, you know, I'm a combat veteran. I was a military officer. And while I'm proud of my service, it's not something like I hang my hat on. Like I don't, you know. And so I appreciate it, but it's like that was a previous life. And I had an opportunity to talk to the president of the company. I said, listen, I would like to lead an EBRG. I said, but really what's most important to me, like how I identify is I identify as a man of God, as a family man and a man of God. And I would love to create an EBRG based on that. I said, that's not going to happen.
Interesting.
And I said,
And why?
really? He said, because that would be divisive. And that was hard to swallow because it's like, okay, so I'm a white privileged male. What I identify as is divisive, but nothing else is. That's tough to hear. You know, and it's not, here's what I want to say about this company. This company's not a bad company, right? And they're making decisions in the best they know how. And they're just like every other company making those decisions, right? So I don't want to paint them as a bad company. And this leader wasn't a bad leader. It was just that's what he felt and that's what he thought.
Sure.
But the message that it sent to me was like my values, who I am, they're not that important. So when I get an email saying that, someone that looks like my son wouldn't be eligible for the scholarship, it was like, okay, that's one more reason that like our values just aren't there.
And I appreciate too that you said this was not a bad company, this wasn't a bad boss, because my first thought when you said your boss said that immediately was empathy. Of like, that guy, he's saying exactly what he thinks he has to say, or he's being a good soldier and doing, and that doesn't, and I don't know, I have no idea who you're talking about, and maybe he isn't a great guy. I have no idea.
And by the way, he was a terrific guy. I'm still very close to him to this day.
Probably a very good leader as well. And like you said at the very beginning, doing the best with the information that we have and doing what we think is right? Yeah. So like, and I guess like on a larger scale then, DEI, because now it's like burning to the ground. All these things are happening, right? But I also find this to be an opportunity to take a step back and look at, did we do it again, where we go from one extreme to the drastic opposite end, and we kind of forget about things in the middle. And I feel like in America, that is something we do a lot, right? Yeah. So like parenting is a great example. We hit and you only talk when you're spoken to, and now it's like, please tell me how I can help you and serve you, child of mine. And then and we miss something in between. So I am feeling like, based on what I'm hearing you say, is when other people were getting maybe a time to shine or like a spotlight or the opportunity to take a place at the table, that happened at the expense of other people having a space versus just creating more spaces for the right people to be stepping up. Yeah,
in the struggle. So you said something that made me think, like, if we did this over again, if we were to do this over again, right? We don't need DEI. We need empathy. Right? That's what we need. People need to understand empathy. Like, and let me give you an example, because you said something about you being a woman and you having this bubbly personality. I had a woman who worked for me, and she was an absolute bear. Like, people did not like her. Smart as a whip, hard worker. People didn't like her. And I had to sit down and have a coaching session with her. And I won't say her name, but I said, I need to understand what's going on, because as smart and hardworking as you are, you're not as effective as you could be. And she said, Adam, it is so hard for me, because for so many years as a woman, if I would make a recommendation, people wouldn't listen to me. But the moment I got aggressive and like matched
the energy.
Yes. She's like, then that's when people would listen. She's like, and it was just, that was like the trigger for me. Like, that's how I have to behave. And I felt so bad for her in that moment, because I understood what she was saying, and I could totally get it. And I think of like what she gained from that, but also what she lost from that. It's like, if we just have the empathy to say, okay, tell me what it is that you want and what your ideas are, and let's walk through them. Not because you're a woman, not because you're a man, but because it seems like a good idea.
Yeah, because you're a person on the team that spoke up, and you deserve to be heard and respected.
Exactly. Yeah. And so DEI in all of its goodness and all of its warts, it can really boil down to, like, we just need people to have more empathy and just to listen to people and understand it, and not be an asshole to one another.
Yeah, right.
That's like, I know that we'll never eradicate, assholism, but
it's here to stay.
But then you run into these issues where you do turn off a lot of people. And so you talked about like DEI and the exclusion of others. So about halfway through my DEI journey, I sat down. I was really good friends with one of the people on the DEI panel for our company. And this company's 12,000 employees, right? I mean, this is a big company, and she sits on the panel, and I had an opportunity to speak with her. I said, listen, when I go on the website and I see that we're celebrating, our black employees, I see that we're celebrating our female employees, I see that we're celebrating our queer employees, but I don't see that we celebrate any white employees just because they're white, right? Everything else we're celebrating because they fit into this mold, and they're a good employee, right? But they fit in this mold, but we don't do that with white men. I said, that I mean, that rubs me the wrong way. And she said, Adam, and I appreciated her candor. She said, Adam, that is a problem that we have, and we know that we have to do something about it. Mm-hmm. But nothing was ever done about it.
Yeah.
Because it was just easier to do it the other way.
Right. And, okay, I have a lot of things to say about, so let me just say quickly before I forget things. One, I am so glad that when you sat down with that woman, you did not say what I thought you were going to say, which is, can you smile more? Because I was going to, like, throw something at you. So I think the way you handled that was so beautifully. Also, and again, I feel like this is a separate thing that we could talk about, but once we know, like once we hear the story, once we know that this is a thing, who's stepping up and being like, guys, Jolene has been trying to talk for the last 5 minutes and nobody's listening.
Yeah.
Or maybe not speaking up in the meeting, but afterwards being like, guys, this is a problem. Our teammate here who's hired to do what we're doing is not being heard, and that's not okay for a team I'm on, and speaking up. But so who's doing that? Because having the empathy, having the understanding, but who's stepping up so that we don't have to have a DEI effort? We can just have people constantly stepping up and being like, why wasn't anybody listening to so-and-so? I watched him try to say something 5 times. Is it because he's gay? Is it whatever the case may be? So that's something like, empathy, awareness, and then actually doing something about it, I think is the thing. And the other thing that I want to comment on quickly is I will be very open and transparent with the fact that I have been very much like, yes, it's about time. We need to create the space so that people can have a shot who wouldn't have before. And I don't not believe that anymore. It's not that doesn't exist in my brain, because I still do think there is something to be said for that. But also, I'm looking at humankind on a grander scale, and we can keep it just like in the United States. But I'm raising 2 little boys right now. And I have a husband who has been very vocal, very similar to your points of views. So he and I have really not butt heads. Like, we can have conversations about it, but we do not agree. And I have said to him, you don't get it. And he's like, if one more person says that to me. And he's like, because he has not the same story as you, but he grew up blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yeah, but you're white. And he's like, okay, we have gone toe to toe many times over this conversation. Now that I have boys and I am learning more and more about how white men are struggling, I'm a fan of a lot of Scott Galloway's work. I'm and I don't care what that makes me on a scale of whatever, but like, it's fascinating to me because I have these humans that I'm trying to raise to be really, really good humans. And it matters to me now more. I'm really paying attention, because if my children are now at higher risk for suicide, drug use, all of these things, I have a huge issue with that. I have a huge issue with that. And if what's stemming that is our society now turning our back and saying, if you're a white man, that means you're an oppressor, that means you're bad just because you're that way, I do take issue with that as well. I think I have a lot of probably liberal-leaning values and whatever, but I will say I have a moment where I feel like enough is enough, and at the end of the day, human is human, people are people, and stop being an asshole. You are not more important than another person, and I also don't think you are more important than another person because you dress nicely and have a good job, and this person is wearing ripped up, dirty clothes, and they sleep on the street. I think humans are humans, and that might be a little rosy glasses, whatever, but I feel that way, and that's what leads me. Like, my value system is, I don't really care who you are, stop being an asshole.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I don't care who you are. Like, you need to be doing the best in whatever. You don't get a free pass for whatever reason. So having all of that to say, I just went off totally on a tangent, but all that to say that I have had a shift in perspective since I have had children. I'm not so much like burning my bra, feminist, whatever. I am in a lot of respects, but I'm that far one way towards the far other way. I'm trying to find that middle of, we need to have a place for all of us to be heard and respected.
Yeah, everyone, and it's funny. So, and you said something. So, we derive our values from our lived experiences, right? And when someone says that you can't talk, you can't speak, you don't know, what it does is it devalues their lived experience, right?
Yeah.
And so I always say, like, there's people I don't agree with, like. But if I grew up in their shoes and I had their lived experience, I would think just the same as they do.
Sure.
You know, and so it doesn't make their opinion wrong. It doesn't make their values wrong. It just makes them not congruent with mine. You know, and so if we can just recognize that we don't have to believe the same thing. We just have to believe that at our core, humans have value. Like, you have value. Just your mere presence makes you valuable, you know, and then your opinion just kind of adds that layer, and you say, okay, well, that's your lived experience. Like, I got to say, the bubbly comment you made earlier. So I was at the VA, getting seen by my doctor at the VA just for a checkup, and she's got no bedside manner whatsoever, right? Like, it doesn't bother me because, like, that's who she is, right? But she was walking me over to introduce me to someone, and she said, "Hey, Kelly, I want to introduce you to Adam. He's probably the most bubbly guy you're going to see all month," right? And she said, and so I looked and said, "Is that a bad thing?" She's like, "No, it's good," because most people she deals with act the same. Yeah, they're the same way that she is, you know, and so you know, but So there are times I feel like I'm not taken serious because I smile a lot and I'm very positive and very bubbly. But the reason I do that is because I've seen how bad things can be and I'm no longer there.
Yeah.
And so I am going to be bubbly and I am going to be happy. And I'm so grateful that you're bubbly and happy because that's how you and I connect. You know, like we don't think that the world is perfect and it's this Pollyanna world. It's just, we think that we can bring more sunshine to it by smiling and being happy than it is to just focus on every negative thing that exists.
Right.
You know, so keep being bubbly.
I will. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes. No, so I just think in general the conversation has given me, I appreciate that I've gotten to see a different perspective. Heard it from a person who also was very open to having the conversation and not doing it in a, I don't want to say aggressive because
confrontational,
it's just a discussion.
You know what,
in a closed-sided way. Like, I appreciate that you said your things and you were extraordinarily respectful to the other side as well, and not shutting that down either, but just saying why it doesn't exactly fit with your values. And so, thank you. And that, I think it's important for everyone to think about, even if you are standing very firmly in the DEI piece and you are not ready to let that go and you're willing to fight for it and all of those things, knowing what another person's perspective is and where they're coming from can only strengthen your view and how you're approaching it even, you know? And so this isn't, I'm just thinking, like, this isn't me trying to tell people you shouldn't be into it. It also isn't me telling everybody that they should be into it, because I hear now why, people aren't. And so thank you for sharing.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That perspective.
Either way, no matter what side of the discussion you are on, you've got to be willing to listen to the other side, because in every sort of debate or argument, there's going to be good points on both sides.
Yeah.
And if we want DEI to be successful, but not to be like this socialist thing, like, both sides have to talk and say, listen, we recognize, like, DEI didn't go exactly as we planned, right?
Yeah.
So maybe let's do a little bit of this. And then the other side says, well, you know what? We could have supported this initiative a little bit better, right? And then we could have the society where, America has got so much potential, but if we're so focused on, like, fighting each other, like, it all goes to shit.
Yeah.
God,
I love so much what you said, and I want to bottle it up and for everybody to hear it. DEI, this didn't exactly go out the way we wanted to, but we still really value this. Yeah, we felt really this, but this is how it could go better. And just finding that way closer and closer to the center every time. Yes, if that is the goal, God, the work that we can do,
Yeah.
the improvements that we can make, just being willing to pivot, ebb, flow, and not be so stuck in this one way
Yeah,
until
absolutely.
you're like bashed over the head with why it didn't work.
Let me ask you this, Casey. Do you think that we have devalued in our society the ability to change your opinion? Do you think like
Yes, for
yeah,
sure.
and I think
Like I'm already worried about, not worried, but I am aware that I am going to have a lot of comments about things I've said today because it's, yes.
But that's growth,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like as a child, I firmly believed that Superman could fly.
Yeah.
Like there was no doubt in my mind. And as I got older and I got more information, I said, oh no, he's just a character on a screen, right? But listen, this is not to get political, but we see it at the highest levels that changing your opinion is somehow this negative thing. And it's like, well, when you get more information, you should.
You should be, yes.
You should be able to
I
change
agree.
your opinion. That's a sign of growth and maturity.
Yeah.
And I think we've kind of said no. If you change your opinion, it means you've got no spine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're ambivalent. You don't really have a point of view, and it's like, no, that isn't the case.
Yeah,
You're willing to be open to other points of view and shift and see how that goes. And yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. And I just want to share quickly before we sign off a story with the listeners and watchers about my conversation with you after the election this last year. Okay, so Adam and I have known each other for about a year now in a professional setting, and we're very similar in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I had assumptions about a political party, but there was no real reason for me to know because I don't actually care what political party somebody is. I care more about the kind of human that you are in a day-to-day. But I was surprised to find out that you were very strongly for the person I was very strongly against. And Adam checked on me the day after the election and was like, how you holding up? And let me tell you, the fact that you meant that,
Yeah.
and the fact that I could also tell you, I am actually struggling way more than I thought I would. I'm way more emotionally invested in what this all meant than I even believed that I was.
Yeah.
And that you listened and you weren't like, bah, too bad, or, well, your person sucked, or whatever. Like, you were so open to that, made me respect you so deeply. And I appreciated that because I am surrounded by a lot of people who are very, now that I know that about you, we are no longer friends.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how you and I would have anything in common where you and I could still exist and be friends, knowing that you voted for this person or believe in this person, because I so strongly, with all of my being, feel the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And I think it was a really beautiful moment that, as an adult, I got to have with another, like, it didn't feel like it was a family pressure or anything like that. It was like I got to have this decision with the person I was discussing and not having to, like, the family dinner where people are arguing things. It just felt different, and it felt good, and I felt stronger afterwards because I myself was like, no, I get to decide.
Yeah.
And that felt very empowering for me.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you
because
for sharing that.
I drastically disagree with you on so many things, but
Yeah.
I also wildly respect you and value your opinion at the same exact time.
And that's the beauty. And again, you disagree with me because of your lived experiences.
Yeah.
And for me to say that your opinion doesn't matter is for me to say your lived experiences don't matter.
Right.
Right? And it's like they do. They do matter.
do.
We can believe different things, and it's okay.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we share the same value. Most importantly, you want to raise those boys to be good adults, right? That's my goal in life, to raise my children to be good adults, right? And we have that no matter what else is going on in this world. That is something that you and I share
Absolutely.
in common. So everything aside, but so the reason I checked on you, so my business partner that I do a lot of work with, 65-year-old gay man, right? And the election was a struggle for him. You know, I work side by side with him, and I get to hear what it means to him. And so I know for folks that, like, this was a big deal to them. Even though, to me, like, win or lose, I'm like, Ice-T said it best. No matter who the president is, I got to get up in the morning and go to work. You know? But to him, this was a big deal.
Yeah.
To you, it was a big, and so it just, and just wanted to check in and say, hey, you know what? How are you?
Yeah. Yeah. And that meant a lot.
Well, good. I'm glad.
So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So I hope, because you said that, the pitchfork folks won't come after me.
Yes, I hope so too. Everybody put your pitchforks down. Okay, last question, and this is the most important one.
Yeah.
And I want you to really think about this. Okay. What is the one song that is guaranteed to get you on the dance floor every time?
Oh, golly.
First of all, do you dance? Only when you're drunk.
Who gets to decide what dancing is? Who gets to listen? And I would honestly say anything Nelly is gonna get me on the dance floor.
I'm with you on this.
Anything Nelly gets me on the dance. And it's so funny because I was listening to Nelly the other day in the car, and I had to shut it off because my kids were in there. It's getting hot in here.
Yeah.
And they're like, she's taking her shirt off. I said, no, because it's so hot. She had a sweatshirt on, so she had to take it off. And like, you know, so I will say not appropriate for the younger crowd, but if it's Nelly, I'm out there dancing.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Well, I revealed mine. I guess I'm just going to say the same one at every episode. I don't know, but the Tootsie Roll every single time. I could be dead asleep, and if that song comes on, I am up and I am going to be dancing. And there's many.
Can you do the Tootsie Rolls? The question. Okay.
Come on, please. Of course I can do the Tootsie Roll.
So, cotton candy. I don't know what the next part is. Cotton candy. Let me see your Tootsie Roll.
Yes, that.
Your Tootsie. Yeah.
I love that. That just. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. That's fair.
Adam, thank you so much for your time today. I so appreciate being here and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my story.
Of course. Today's episode of Click with Casey is sponsored by North Star Erie LLC. When the bank says no, North Star Erie says, let's find a way. Whether you're buying your first home or investing in a commercial property, North Star Erie LLC offers creative mortgage solutions that banks just don't. Brian Potts and his team specialize in residential and commercial lending, including FHA loans for people who have credit scores in the 580s. They actually take the time to understand your goals, and they will dig to find solutions that banks just won't invest the time in doing. They're located on Peninsula Drive in Erie, Pennsylvania. So if you want to look up North Star Erie to help you buy smarter and with confidence, please do so and let them know Casey sent you.